Sarah Pochin from Reform has been making some off-the-cuff remarks on a talk radio platform about overrepresentation of black people in adverts, of all things to be talking about. She was asked a question about it and she provided an answer. And of course this has been twisted all out of shape for the media. So just for posterity, this was the full 2-minute clip where she was asked the question and she provided quite a direct answer.
A bit left field, this one, but I think it's creepingly important. Would Reform do anything to look at the representation of the demographics of TV and public advertising? Because we're getting to the point now where adverts don't represent what this country looks like, and actually positive demonisation of white people, just portrayed as criminals or inadequate when they're not portrayed anywhere else. Now, the reason why this is important, we got a case of art imitates life, because we're getting to the point where a number of my friends think that we're being discriminated like in employment markets because white men are seen as useless and whatever and just invisible. And there's one financial institution which coincidentally uses a strikingly similar image of Nigel in their advertising for an incompetent, useless, arrogant white male. I just wondered if that's something Reform would look into.
Okay, Stuart, stay where you are. Sarah, what do you think of what Stuart's saying? What would Reform UK do about it, if anything?
I think Stuart's absolutely right. Drives me mad when I see adverts full of black people, full of Asian people, full of, people that basically are anything.
What's wrong with that, Sarah? What's wrong with that?
Well, it doesn't reflect our society, and I feel that your average white person, average white family is like I agree with you, Stuart, not represented anymore in TV.
There are lots of white people on television, Sarah, or they're not. There are lots of white people. There are lots of white men. There are lots of white women.
We're talking about adverts, and how many times do you look at a TV advert and you think there's not a single white person on it? And actually it is. It's something that's happened because, I believe, of the woke liberality that goes on inside, this sort of like in the arty-farty world. When it comes to, northern towns like Runcorn that I represent, it's just not representative of the rest of the country. Might be fine inside the M25, but it's definitely not representative of the rest of the country. And actually, you know what, I'm hearing this more and more. People notice.
Right, so that's Sarah Pochin there, giving you her point of view on what's going down there regarding adverts. Now, what would be the reaction? Well, there was quite a vehement reaction from Wes Streeting on the Sunday morning political rounds that he was doing, and he went nuclear on the whole thing, started talking about patriotism. I mean, I was perplexed with this whole diatribe that he went on here, but here's the basic response from Mr. Streeting.
She's only sorry that she's been caught and called out, and she said the quiet bit loud. On Friday afternoon, I went to one of my local secondary schools listening to teenage boys aged between year 7, so around 11, right up to the age of 18, describe their experiences of racism in our capital city, in one of the most diverse cities on earth. And what they are describing and what we have seen on our streets in recent weeks and months is a return of 1970s, 1980s style racism that I thought we had left in the history books. And the only way we are going to defeat this racism is to call it out and confront it for what it is, and for the decent majority of this country to stand against it, as we have always done. I think what she said was a disgrace. I think it was racist, and the deafening silence from her party leader says it all. Reform is a party who think that our flag only belongs to some of us who look like me, not all of us who have built this country, built its success. And let's not forget, when we remember the service and the sacrifice with this poppy, that the people who bled and died for our democracy and our freedom weren't just my grandfather and my great-grandfather who looked like me and worshipped the same God as me. It was people from right across what was then the Empire, now the Commonwealth. People who are Muslim, people who are Sikh, people who are Hindu, people who look differently than you and I do. And we should remember that, defend it, and fight for what this country stands for. A decent, respectful and inclusive democracy, the most successful multi-faith democracy in the world. We stand for that, Reform don't, and that's why they're not fit to govern.
Oh, well, thanks for joining the dots up for us there, Wes. We wouldn't have known what you were doing there. So they're not fit to govern because Sarah Pochin had some remarks about overrepresentation of black people in adverts, which was the question that she was asked. The radio station Talk put that question through to her. So Sarah Pochin sitting there in the studio, she gets a question, she answers it. She answered it honestly, and I'm 100% behind her answer without fear of reservation or without people wanting to call me a racist, because it's not racist to point out a fact. And the fact is that black people are hugely overrepresented in advertising. Why that is, I don't know. I believe it's got something to do with, as Sarah alluded to there, the woke elite wanting to push this narrative onto people. I mean, for years and years we've watched Marks and Spencer adverts projecting these multicultural families, and everyone just looks at these adverts and thinks they're a little bit stupid. You know, ramming this down people's throats is just really silly at this stage. And, you know, that question there, she was asked, right, why is it that it makes you mad? And she said, because it doesn't reflect our society at large. And then there was a rebuttal there, and he said, oh, you're saying that you don't like seeing black people on TV. And just said, no, we're not talking about that. We're talking about adverts. So you see what Talk we're trying to do. Talk we're trying to get the exclusive all the time. Let's put that through. Let's get her to comment on black people on television because we know that she's going to tell us the truth. And then let's try and make it so it was all about television. And it's not about television. It was a specific question about adverts. And, you know, when you get down to the top and bottom of it, I don't think anybody cares. And that's the funny thing about it. Labour are preaching here to their choir, and you go on social media and everybody is ranting and raving about this, quite literally, because they've got nothing else to talk about. Like, let's have a look at small boat arrivals today. How many millions of pounds has that cost the British taxpayer as we're all struggling to get out of bed and hit our alarm clocks today? You get what I'm saying here. There are a million issues that we need to be talking about, but whether or not black people are overrepresented in the media is one question, but it's a teeny tiny little thing. It was a question that she was asked. And, you know, these things in modern politics, in our modern political discourse, we're moving so far away from each other as to be ridiculous at the moment. And of course, on the back of Wes Streeting's comments about, you know, what a cool place we are to be and everything like that, there was something humorous did happen over the weekend, which was, you know, in complete opposition to Mr. Streeting's view of the country. And there was a march through Whitechapel in London. UKIP, the political party, they're kind of heavily focused on Christianity and nationalism. They wanted to do a walk through Whitechapel and to discuss and raise the issue of mass deportations. And of course this annoyed quite a few of the locals because, you know, there were 40% of the local people are self-categorised as Muslim. And so what happened was there were gangs of Muslim men roaming the streets. The police then decided to relocate the UKIP march. And of course they allowed the counter-protest to go ahead, even though there was no protest in the area. And this is what you had.
No need for that. We're on the same side, bro. No, we're not. Yes, we are, bro.
And let's not forget, when we remember the service and the sacrifice with this poppy, that the people who bled and died for our democracy and our freedom weren't just my grandfather and my great-grandfather who looked like me and worshipped the same God as me. It was people from right across what was then the empire, now the Commonwealth. People who are Muslim, people who are Sikh, people who are Hindu, people who look differently than you and I do. And we should remember that, defend it, and fight for what this country stands for. A decent, respectful and inclusive democracy, the most successful multi-faith democracy in the world.
There's no need for that. We're on the same side, bro. No, we're not. Yes, we are, bro.
And the best thing that Wes Streeting has to say about the state of our country is that he's very, very proud of the country that his grandfathers died for. That was the country that they fought for. And this is our country today. And this is the country that Wes Streeting and his cronies in the Labour Party are creating. Doing nothing about this. And what do you do with a problem like this? And even as you saw in the video there, the lad standing on the side with a sign, the Stand Up to Racism sign in pink, which is just a peachy thing to see on the side of a march like that. And then he said, "We're on your side, bruv." And the man turned to him and said, "No, you're not." And I thought that was a very, very funny part of the march there, outside, of course, of stopping traffic, because people believe that their right to pray trumps your right to walk around and, pursue whatever business you want in your life. And all of these things put together, the best thing that our media can do is, while there are gangs of masked Islamic men walking around the country screaming, "Our streets, our streets," the best thing that the government can do is talk about Sarah Pochin and overrepresentation of black people in the media, in adverts, which is a provable fact. And look, is it any wonder we're at the stage where we are now? We can't even look around and stand up and look around at our society at the moment. It just beggars belief on so many levels. Thanks very much for your time.